Welcome to another book overview episode of our Mandatory Mental Liberation series, produced by Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin, for this book overview episode titled The Story Whiteness Tells Itself, Racial Myths and Our American Narratives by David Mura. The necessity of the Mandatory Mental Liberation series at Majestic Mind Matters University lies in our focus on serving our melanin-rich culture communities. By addressing the importance of knowledge of self to produce greater self-awareness and advocating for our mental liberation, but especially in our melanin-rich culture children, our messages aims to combat the enduring effects of generational mental enslavement stemming from the historical trauma of the chattel enslavement of the ancestors. Our initiative seeks to empower us to break free from these harmful and unfavorable legacies and cultivate a deep-rooted sense of self-identity and unwavering resilience. In his book, The Story Whiteness Tells Itself, Racial Myths and Our American Narratives, David Mura, an Asian man, delves deep into the complexities of race, identity, and power in America. David Mura explores how the narratives we tell ourselves about race shape our understanding of the present, influence how we narrate the past, and ultimately determine where we go from here. In the present moment, David Mura examines the murder of Philando Castile and the negation of melanin-rich people innocence. He unpacks how Black Lives Matter challenges the social contract that has long excluded our melanin-rich culture people from full citizenship and humanity. Drawing on the wisdom of James Baldwin, David Mura discusses how the history of racial violence and oppression repeats itself from the Harlem riots to Ferguson, Baltimore, and the BLM movement. David Mura then delves into how we narrate the past and how white memory shapes our understanding of history. He discusses the ways in which racial epistemologies and ontologies shape our thinking about race and identity. From Thomas Jefferson and the Enlightenment to the master-slave dialectic and the signifying monkey in Black history, Mura critiques the ways in which history is often distorted and whitewashed to uphold white supremacy. In examining the contemporary white literary imagination, David Mura analyzes how whiteness is portrayed in storytelling, from the film and novel Amistad to the works of Faulkner and Morrison. He challenges the notion of Lincoln as a great American while also acknowledging his racist beliefs. David Mura also delves into the racial regression seen in figures like Trump and Obama and explores the unfavorable legacy of Reconstruction in shaping the current racial landscape. David Mura then turns his attention to the role of psychotherapy in crafting a new national narrative around race. He explores the concepts of racial absence and racial presence in the works of Jonathan Franzen and Z.Z. Packer, and interrogates the ways in which white assumptions continue to perpetuate structural racism in society. In the final section, David Mura raises profound questions about identity and the possibility of abandoning whiteness as a form of liberation. He reflects on the words of James Baldwin in I Am Not Your Negro, and the haunting refrain of I can't breathe, that echoes through the streets in response to police violence against melanin-rich culture bodies. David Mura ends with a coda on Dante Wright, reminding readers of the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America. Overall, Whiteness Tells Itself is a powerful and timely exploration of race in America that challenges readers to confront uncomfortable truths about America's past, present, and future. David Mura's insightful analysis and thought-provoking questions invite us to rethink how we understand race, power, and privilege in society, and to work towards a more just and equitable world for all. Racial myths contribute to the portrayal of certain groups as inferior or superior within society by perpetuating stereotypes and misconceptions about different racial groups. These myths often reinforce existing power dynamics and hierarchies, leading to discrimination and prejudice against marginalized communities. Here are just 4 common ways in which racial myths contribute to the portrayal of us as inferior or superior include. 1. Stereotyping. Racial myths often involve oversimplified and exaggerated stereotypes about certain racial groups, portraying us as lazy, unintelligent, or violent. These stereotypes leading to discrimination and negative treatment of our melanin-rich culture people. 2. Justification of inequality. Racial myths are often used to justify social and economic inequality by attributing differences in outcomes to supposed inherent racial characteristics, leading to the perpetuation of systemic racism and discrimination against marginalized communities. 3. Dehumanization. Racial myths can dehumanize individuals belonging to certain racial groups, reducing them to one-dimensional caricatures and denying their humanity. This can lead to the justification of violence and mistreatment of these groups. 4. Reinforcement of privilege. Racial myths that portray certain groups as inherently superior can reinforce existing power dynamics and privilege within society. This can undermine efforts towards achieving equality and justice for all individuals regardless of their race. Overall, racial myths contribute to the portrayal of certain groups as inferior or superior by perpetuating harmful stereotypes, justifying inequality, dehumanizing individuals, and reinforcing privilege. It is important to challenge and debunk these myths in order to promote understanding, empathy, and equality for all individuals, regardless of their race. Racial myths have long plagued our society, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and contributing to systemic racism. These myths, which often stem from ignorance, prejudice, and fear, can have detrimental effects on marginalized communities and hinder progress towards achieving equality and social justice. It is imperative that we work diligently to debunk and challenge these myths in order to create a more inclusive and equitable society. One of the first steps in debunking racial myths is to educate ourselves and others about the history and impact of these myths. It is important to understand the origins of these myths and how they have been used to justify discrimination and oppression. By educating ourselves, we can gain a better understanding of the complexities of race and racism and work towards dismantling these harmful beliefs. Additionally, it is crucial to engage in open and honest conversations about race and racism. By acknowledging and discussing the existence of racial myths, we can challenge stereotypes and misconceptions and promote a more nuanced understanding of race. These conversations can help to build empathy and understanding and create a space for individuals to unpack their own biases and prejudices. Furthermore, it is essential to amplify the voices of those who have been marginalized and oppressed by racial myths. By centering the experiences and perspectives of marginalized communities, we can highlight the real-life impact of these myths and challenge the dominant narratives that perpetuate them. By listening to and uplifting these voices, we can work towards creating a more just and equitable society for all. In addition to education and dialogue, it is important to actively combat the spread of racial myths through media and misinformation. This includes critically evaluating the sources of information we consume, challenging inaccurate representations of race in media, and calling out racist rhetoric and propaganda. By holding media outlets and public figures accountable for perpetuating racial myths, we can help to dismantle harmful stereotypes and promote more accurate and inclusive narratives. Another key strategy for debunking racial myths is to advocate for policies and practices that promote equality and social justice. This includes supporting initiatives that address systemic racism, promote diversity and inclusion, and work towards dismantling structural barriers to equity. By advocating for policies that prioritize racial justice, we can create a more equitable society that values and uplifts the dignity and rights of all individuals. Furthermore, it is important to recognize the intersectionality of race and other forms of systemic oppression, including gender, sexuality, class, and ability. By understanding the interconnected nature of these systems of oppression, we can work towards building solidarity across marginalized communities and challenging the intersecting barriers that perpetuate inequality and injustice. Debunking and challenging racial myths is a crucial step towards promoting equality and social justice. By educating ourselves, engaging in open dialogue, amplifying marginalized voices, combating misinformation, advocating for policy change, and recognizing intersectionality, we can work towards dismantling harmful stereotypes and creating a more inclusive and equitable society. It is up to each of us to take action and challenge the entrenched beliefs and systems that perpetuate racial myths in order to create a world where all individuals are valued and treated with dignity and respect. Here are just 6 ways can organizations and institutions address systemic racism in order to promote greater equality and social justice. 1. Education and awareness. Organizations can provide training on systemic racism and its impact on marginalized communities. This can help employees understand the root causes of inequality and how they can work to address them. 2. Implementing anti-racism policies. Organizations can establish policies that explicitly address racism and discrimination, providing clear guidelines on how to prevent and address incidents of racial bias in the workplace. 3. Diverse hiring practices. Organizations can actively seek out and promote diversity in their hiring practices, ensuring that people of all backgrounds have equal opportunities for employment and advancement within the organization. 4. Creating an inclusive workplace culture. Organizations can foster a culture of inclusivity and respect, where individuals from all backgrounds feel valued and supported. This can include creating affinity groups for employees of color, providing mentorship opportunities, and actively listening to and addressing the concerns of marginalized employees. 5. Supporting community initiatives. Organizations can partner with community groups and organizations that are working to address systemic racism and promote social justice. This can include providing financial support, volunteering, and engaging in advocacy efforts. 6. Holding leadership accountable. Organizations must hold their leadership accountable for promoting diversity and addressing systemic racism within the organization. This can include setting goals for diversity and inclusion, conducting regular audits of hiring and promotion practices, and providing transparent reporting on progress towards these goals. Systemic racism is a pervasive issue that continues to impact marginalized communities in various aspects of society, including the workplace. In order to address this issue and create a more inclusive and equitable work environment, organizations must take concrete steps to combat racism and promote diversity and inclusion. By implementing education and awareness programs, anti-racism policies, diverse hiring practices, creating an inclusive workplace culture, supporting community initiatives, and holding leadership accountable, organizations can work towards eliminating systemic racism in the workplace. Education and awareness are crucial in combating systemic racism within organizations. By providing training on systemic racism and its impact on marginalized communities, organizations can help employees understand the root causes of inequality and how they can work to address them. This training can help raise awareness about the prevalence of racial bias and discrimination in the workplace and empower employees to take action to combat it. Additionally, education on diversity, equity, and inclusion can help foster a greater understanding and appreciation of different cultures and perspectives, creating a more respectful and inclusive work environment. Implementing anti-racism policies is another important step that organizations can take to combat systemic racism in the workplace. By establishing clear policies that explicitly address racism and discrimination, organizations can provide employees with guidelines on how to prevent and address incidents of racial bias. These policies can outline procedures for reporting discrimination, provide resources for employees who have experienced racism, and establish consequences for discriminatory behavior. By setting clear expectations and consequences, organizations can create a more equitable and inclusive work environment for all employees. Diverse hiring practices are also essential in addressing systemic racism within organizations. By actively seeking out and promoting diversity in their hiring practices, organizations can ensure that people of all backgrounds have equal opportunities for employment and advancement within the organization. This can help break down barriers to entry for marginalized groups and create a more representative and inclusive workforce. Additionally, diverse hiring practices can lead to a more diverse range of perspectives and ideas within the organization, fostering creativity and innovation. Creating an inclusive workplace culture is key to combating systemic racism in the workplace. Organizations can foster a culture of inclusivity and respect by creating affinity groups for employees of color, providing mentorship opportunities, and actively listening to and addressing the concerns of marginalized employees. By creating a supportive and welcoming environment for all employees, organizations can help ensure that everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of their background. Supporting community initiatives is another way that organizations can work to address systemic racism in the workplace. By partnering with community groups and organizations that are working to promote social justice and address systemic racism, organizations can demonstrate their commitment to equality and inclusion. This can include providing financial support, volunteering, and engaging in advocacy efforts to support marginalized communities and promote positive change. Finally, holding leadership accountable is crucial in driving progress towards diversity and inclusion within organizations. By setting goals for diversity and inclusion, conducting regular audits of hiring and promotion practices, and providing transparent reporting on progress towards these goals, organizations can ensure that leadership is actively working towards creating a more inclusive work environment. Holding leaders accountable for promoting diversity and addressing systemic racism within the organization helps establish a culture of accountability and transparency, fostering trust and respect among employees. In conclusion, addressing systemic racism in the workplace requires a multifaceted approach that includes education and awareness, anti-racism policies, diverse hiring practices, creating an inclusive workplace culture, supporting community initiatives, and holding leadership accountable. By taking these steps, organizations can work towards eliminating systemic racism and creating a more equitable and inclusive work environment for all employees. It is essential for organizations to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in order to create a more just and equitable society for all. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that you have expanded your understanding through the insights shared by Baba Jalani Bomani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University, in our mandatory mental liberation series message book overview titled The Story Whiteness Tells Itself, Racial Myths and Our American Narratives by David Mura. Remember this, it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured many unwarranted struggles, preserved our melanin-rich culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through many generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay honorable tribute to our roots and draw great strength and much-needed inspiration from the unwavering resilience and royal legacy that has paved the way for our present and future generations. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to continually uphold our own melanin-rich identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Here is an ancient Alkebulan proverb to keep in mind. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. Remember this as well. Whenever you are in the presence of anyone saying, they don't see color, it actually means they don't see you. As a member of our melanin-rich culture, you must strive for knowledge of self for greater personal awareness. Always treat yourself kindly and seek to live a totally awesome and gloriously fulfilling melanin-rich culture life. So, like, subscribe, and share this very special melanin-rich culture link with everyone that you care about and that really cares about you and all of yours as well, and thank you for listening. Ashe.